Armenia is a small, landlocked Christian nation surrounded by mostly non-Christian neighbors. Azerbaijan over there, Iran down there, and Turkey right there. Turkey and relations with Turkey, and the Armenian people's terrible history with that country being the central and defining issue of Armenian identity, and a present-day political reality 103 years after what just about anyone would call genocide. Turkey has always adamantly denied that, saying it was simply a messy war. Yerevan is the capital of Armenia, a city of about 1 million people. Mount Ararat looms over it, a cultural touchstone and a constant reminder of what was done on the other side. Think of Armenia, and chances are you think instead of an Armenian. Maybe someone you know, or maybe someone on TV. These guys, for instance, famous Armenians. We needed an Armenian. I needed an Armenian to push me over the edge, help me find a window, a lens with which to look at a country which, for some reason, I'd managed to not visit on my travels. Then this guy reached out. Serj Tankian, frontman for the Armenian-American band System of a Down. And the whole thing started to fall into place. Serj first visited Armenia 17 years ago. Since then, he's performed a number of shows, including one with System of a Down during the centennial of the Armenian Genocide. We meet up at Dolmama, his favorite restaurant in Yerevan, and right away, I identify a potential problem.
Well, my first question is, I understand you're a pescatarian?
Yeah. Yeah.
How does one...
You're like, what the fuck are you doing?
This is a landlocked country in the heart of, like, meat on a stick zone.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to see how you navigate your way through this week.
Yeah. Well, we've got amazing trout and lots of great veggies. Yeah.
I'm just busting your balls.
Of course you are. Of course you are.
So, how Armenian are you? I mean...
That's a really good question.
You were born in...
I was born in Beirut, grew up in L.A. I'm Armenian by culture. Both my parents are Armenian. My grandparents, ended up in Syria and Lebanon because of the genocide. Mm-hmm. And how Armenian am I? That's a really good question, man. Majority of Armenians that live in the diaspora didn't voluntarily migrate. Mm-hmm. You know, they were forced migrations, pogroms, and after the genocide, so they ended up in the Middle East and Europe and different parts of the world. So we have this kind of feeling of being kicked out. And that longing is different than other diasporas, I think, because of that.
Diaspora Armenian communities, wherever they are, have been held together by deep feelings of nationalism and injustice for what happened to them and how the world refused to acknowledge it. Dolmama specializes in modern versions of Armenian classic dishes. Hashlama, a braised lamb shank served with rice pilaf.
It's a big little snack.
That is a leg of lamb, a little guy, yes?
Yeah.
Wow, it's pretty too.
So manti's like my grandmother used to make it, but it looks completely different than this because this is vegetarian manti. They're like little boats with spices and onions.
You probably thank Genghis Khan for this, the dumplings.
He made it happen. He took all the manuscripts, killed 1 million people, but brought
But he left
dumplings.
you dumplings.
He left me, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, this is what my soul needed.
Good.
What was it like coming back the first time? And how old were you and what was it like?
I had a mystical connection because I had never been to Armenia and we had only read about it in books, per se, Armenia, modern Armenia is different, than what I had thought of, because it's thriving, it's young, it's got a lot of interesting dynamics. And I remember first time I flew back to LA, the feeling that I got getting out of the plane is, why am I back here? Like, it was a weird thing where it's this inescapable feeling of kind of the land having some kind of pull on your blood or something like that, genealogy. I don't know what it is.
Do you think that Armenia looks to the West for anything?
Yes, definitely. I think, culturally, Armenia is very European.
Culturally?
Culturally.
But
Politically, it's very much tied into Russia. Not just as an ex-Soviet republic, but there's a lot of economic investment from Russia. And Russia, obviously, based on the last two world wars, is extremely, what's the word? They're very afraid of their borders, let's say, you know?
Yes.
They
are acutely sensitive to particularly this area.
There are 3 million Armenians living in Armenia, another 8 million around the world. Ever since the genocide, it's been a long existential struggle for survival. Recent history is defined by 3 major events: a massive earthquake in 1988, followed by the collapse of the USSR in 1991, and then a full-scale war with Azerbaijan in 1992. Not to mention limited employment opportunities and, most significantly, its borders, of which approximately 80% have been closed due to relationships with its Turkish and Azeri neighbors. Things have not been easy for Armenians. On a hillside overlooking Yerevan sits a sprawling memorial to the genocide of 1915. On the other side of town, another memorial, the Yerevan Cascade. Richard Giragosian is an American-born professor and political analyst who now lives here in Armenia.
How many were lost during this?
Most estimates historically put it around 1.5 million.
It's a lot of people.
Especially a lot of people when we look at the per capita, when we look at the impact this had.
So what happened? In the early 20th century, what was historically Western Armenia was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, present-day Turkey. Justifying their actions by the widely held sentiment that Christian Armenians would align themselves with a hostile and also Christian Russia, then undergoing its second revolution and threatening their borders, the Turks rounded up Armenian intellectuals and summarily executed them. Military and police units were dispatched to the countryside to drive out Armenians from their villages. They hanged local leaders in the town squares, burned churches, destroyed manuscripts, then marched anyone left towards the Syrian desert, deliberately starving them along the way. Those who survived scattered across the globe. They formed large and vibrant communities that survive today. They never forgot the past and who and what had pushed them from their homeland.
Let's start with this, genocide. Many people seem awfully and curiously reluctant to use this word. As American national or foreign policy, we use what, catastrophe? Yeah, a regrettable series of incidents.
Yeah, how insulting.
Yes. But I mean, it seems to me, just as a casual observer, anytime a state actor or organization makes a concerted and organized effort to eradicate any ethnic or national group, that's genocide, right?
Yes. What's important, though, however, is this is our defining issue. This is the unifying issue, and it's probably in many ways the only defining issue, both good and bad.
For Armenians, both diaspora and living here.
Yes. It's the fact that, yes, my grandfather's a survivor, every family's touched, but it's not the personal, it's also the political. If Turkey wasn't so adamant about denying the historical accuracy, this is what makes it a living issue, a present issue.
Going forward, do you think there will be some kind of reconciliation?
Well, I'm a little more positive. This is now the turning point. Armenia looking to normalize relations with Turkey, not because of the genocide, but despite the genocide.
Do you have any expectation of fruitful negotiations with Erdogan? It seems to me that things have kind of taken a downward turn.
They have, but it was never supposed to be that easy or that quick. We also need to go beyond victimization and to take more pride in survival.
lavash, the national bread. An ever-present feature on the Armenian table and a part of everyday life. Baked on a tonir, or underground clay oven, its preparation is passed down from generation to generation. Markets like Gyumri, near the city center, date back to Soviet days, but they remain a favorite stop for an older generation of Armenians.
Պատրճան, բիբար, լոլիկ, կաղամբ, ինչ պիտի առնենք։
October brings an array of seasonal produce, and Miriam and her grandmother Leah pick up ingredients for a fall tradition, gapama, a rice dish baked in pumpkin.
Գապամայի համար որն է հարմար։ Էս հարմար է։
The top of the pumpkin is removed, and the seeds and pulp are scraped out. Dried fruit, almonds, and honey are mixed with rice and baked inside.
Incredible.
So, as main course, we prepared gapama, which has its own song. Serj. Usually, when you bring in the dish, you sing it. We don't cook it very often, but it's an autumn meal. We have some pickles there. We have Armenian cheese there, and I'm gonna serve Armenian bread.
And this looks like hummus.
It is
Yes,
hummus.
it is absolutely.
Hummus and mutaba.
Yeah, and it's not Armenian.
This is mutaba, yeah. We're not laying any claims that they're Armenian, but many Western Armenian families grow up with this on the table as well.
Miriam, her mother and grandmother were all born here in Yerevan. Her husband, Nazareth, and his family are more typical of the diaspora Armenians. His mom, Nar, was born in Beirut, Nazareth in Toronto.
What language will your children speak? And where will they live?
Here?
Yeah, here.
No hesitation.
That's the easy question to answer.
But, I mean, I think the two of us would like them to grow up being equally comfortable with Armenian, Russian, and English.
Yep.
All three languages are very, very important for anyone growing up in Armenia.
Yeah, I mean, they are the two largest Armenian diasporas, Russia and America, so.
How many years as part of the Soviet Union?
70 years more, since 1921, more or less, until 1991, so 70 years.
But what remains of those times?
Հարցնում են սովետական ժամանակներից ձեր կարծիքով Հայաստանում հիմա ինչն է մնացել։
Գիտեք, առաջ բարյացական վերաբերմունքը մարդկանց այդա շատ է կողմնակի մարդկանցից։ Հիմա վերաբերմունքը փոխվել է եւ բոլորը դարել են ինդիվիդուալիստներ։
You sound wistful about the old days. Are things better now or worse?
Չէ, դժվար է ասել լավ է թե վատ է, որովհետեւ կարելի է լավը եւ վատը։
When Armenia was swallowed up by the Soviet Union in 1922, it became the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic. With that came purges and paranoia, but also a rapid industrialization, the evidence of which is still seen today in the abandoned factories and workers' blocks of another time. And a Soviet mentality and sizable Russian presence still hang over the country like a dead weight. No matter how you felt about Soviet rule, the transition was a rough one. After the collapse of the USSR in 1991, Armenia suffered terrible food shortages and a ruined electrical grid that allowed only a couple of hours of power a day, if you were lucky.
The worst of those years would be 1992 to 1994.
Right.
But then a few years after 94 as well.
There was a lot of pilferage in the beginning. There was a lot of, it was dark, dark days.
I'm the generation who literally learned alphabet with a candlelight. Back then we had only 2 hours, maybe. Mom's was որական քանի ժամ լույս էր լինում։ Մի ժամ, 2 ժամ, 3 ժամ։ It was something to observe because during those 2 hours, someone would go to the balcony and scream in the yard, "We have lights, the electricity is back." And everybody would go to their laundry, ironing, cooking, everything would be done in that 1 hour. With the slide there.
Ժամանակները մենք սարսափով ենք հիշում եւ զարմանում ենք ինչպես ենք դիմացել։
Oh, yeah. But they raised us with love And we would play games. Mom would have her friends coming over playing guitar. Looking back, I don't remember that darkness. I remember that it was dark, but emotionally, we didn't feel that. Parents, grandparents really did their best for kids not to feel that darkness.
It was heroism on their part.
Especially in the winter.
Especially in the winter.
But also, I think we're observing very interesting period of our history when change is happening. Little by little, and it's us to make, right, Serj?
My trip to the disputed Armenian-controlled enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh requires an early morning stop at a military base on the outskirts of Yerevan. And apparently, a flight in this thing. A smoking, flame-belching, banged-up-looking Soviet Mi-8 twin-turbine chopper whose appearance prior to boarding does not fill me with confidence. But once up in the air, it takes me over crags and peaks and steps across the internationally recognized border with Azerbaijan to what the Armenians call Artsakh, an isolated pocket surrounded on all sides by Azeris. Whose mountains these are is a subject of contention and conflict, to say the least. When the borders of the South Caucasus were drawn by the Russian conquerors some 200 years ago, a strong Russian presence kept ethnic and religious rivalries in check. But whenever disorder hit Russia, war has broken out here, most recently after the fall of the USSR. The brutal conflict went largely ignored internationally. As with any war, particularly wars with an ethnic or religious component over territory, it was ugly, murderous, and with atrocities committed by both sides. 1992 was a turning point. The Armenians organized and created their own army, and surprising everyone, pushed through and took full control of Karabakh and the surrounding areas. These buffer zones are ethnically Azeri and bitterly contested and the subject of continuing dispute. There are still violent confrontations, the latest being a 4-day battle in the spring of 2016. Russia's role in the conflict is suspiciously cynical. They actively arm, support, and advise both sides, as it appears in their interest that there be no lasting resolution. Travel to this region continues to be a particularly sensitive issue, especially for the Azeris. Simply by coming here, I've become, as I read in the papers a few days later, officially persona non grata in Azerbaijan. Stepanakert is the capital of the Autonomous Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh, and overlooking it, the village of Shushi. Shingalo Hats is a specialty of the region. This lavash bread is stuffed with greens and onions before being toasted atop a cast iron sheet. Horovats, basically Armenian barbecue. Meat on a stick, which is, let's face it, always good.
It's our trend, Karabakh. Armenia try sometimes cook it. Not the same thing.
Armenia and Karabakh,
Yeah.
two different things, or the same?
Not really. Karabakh is definitely part of the Armenian civilization and the Armenian culture. I wouldn't separate them.
I think Karabakh is part of Armenia, but not part of Republic of Armenia. It's like a continuation of Armenia. We are the same.
Tigran served in the military and is now in Karabakh's only opposition party. Tatul is a journalist. Saro, our host, is Armenian, but born in Azerbaijan, having fled during the war. He now runs a guest house here in Shushi.
To what extent is this Not just a religious conflict.
No,
No, it's not really.
Not at all.
No, nothing.
Look,
nothing.
this is a Christian island.
No.
In a
Well, this
sea
is
of
Christian
Muslims.
island, it's true. This is Christian island. But the conflict of Nagorno-Karabakh is not religious.
There are people, hardliners here, who refer to Azeris as Turks.
But they
As
are
if-
Turks.
They are Turks.
They are Turks, yes, they are
So
Turks.
please explain.
I think probably they are not identified, they did not bear historical responsibility for the actions committed by the Ottomans, but the struggle of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh for their existence is a continuation of the struggle of Armenian people to live peacefully in their historical homeland.
I'm not saying that the Azeris and Turks are the same nations, but they are Turkic nations.
They're working in unison.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they are working in unity today to isolate Armenia.
Do you think there's a sense that when people look at this conflict, they look back and they say, this is what could happen in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. It is absolutely an existential conflict. If we lose, we know that we will be destroyed.
Who will help? Who cares?
Support?
Who will support you if things once again get ugly? What do you think the future?
No one.
What do you
No
think?
one.
No
We.
one.
I think there is a clear understanding in Armenian society that we can only rely on ourselves.
But another reality is we are paying very, very high price. Since 1994, Armenians and Karabakh sides lost about 3,000 soldiers. We are losing our 18, 20 years old sons, you know. This is sad reality. And I don't know how will this situation continue. I don't know. I think it's right time to drink
Yes.
for peace.
Bravo.
For peace.
I want to.
Yeah.
You read my minds now. So.
It's a 3.5-hour train ride from the capital to Gyumri, Armenia's second largest city. Gyumri was at the near epicenter of the magnitude 7.0 earthquake that absolutely devastated much of the country in 1988, killing 25,000 people and displacing hundreds of thousands more. Recovery was made more difficult by the subsequent collapse of the Soviet Union and the Karabakh War. Manufacturing, infrastructure, the country's industrial base, and political stability all crumbled along with the buildings. A cemetery on the way into town gives you a powerful reminder of how many died. One tombstone after another, all dating back to the same year.